Hey everybody, Adam Savage here in my cave with the media half of my favorite things from 2021. Like you, I have survived much of the last couple of years by informing myself, by self-soothing myself, by finding escape in all of the different media I have consumed, whether it's television, podcasts, or movies, etc. I have compiled a pretty fat list of some of my favorite media over the last year. First, I'm going to start with YouTube channels that I dig. If you are interested in machining things, as I am, it is hard to do better than Joe Posinski, Joe Pie. Joe is he's like my fantasy high school shop teacher. I wish I had had him as a shop teacher. He does these wonderful videos. He's been lately making a miniature lathe and parts for a miniature shop out of some kits. Watching him use giant machine tools to make tiny parts is never not thrilling. But also, he begins with a kind of a pep talk in front of a whiteboard. He shows you what he's going to do. He talks about the concepts that he's going to cover. Joe's YouTube channel is a rich plethora of machining knowledge that Joe has built over a lifetime. I'm a fan. Along the same lines, for those who are gluttons for punishment, I also recommend Stefan Gottsvinter. I don't know if I'm getting his name pronounced right, Stefan, who regularly machines things, and he says things like, well, that one is in a couple of microns, so I guess that's okay. Like, what Stefan considers okay, I consider so far past my own skill level that watching his channel is mostly aspirational. But again, there have been specific ways in watching Stefan's channel, in the clear ways he explains how he uses the tools in his shop, what he uses them for, how he builds orders of operations, that has been a tremendous education for me. Also, I'm very happy about the return of This Old Tony. He took a break from YouTube. He's come back recently, and it's a return to form. I have talked on the channel before how much I love Ted Woodford, Twofford, the YouTube channel where he repairs and mostly repairs guitars of every stripe, electric, acoustic, from every phase of history of guitars. I think of him in my head as the cranky luthier because he's often not in a great mood about, you know, the broken neck of some guitar. However, again, I find his steady, precise, careful approach to guitar repair to feel like a very safe place to spend lots of time in. I often fall asleep watching Ted's videos, and I don't mean that they're boring. I mean, they put me into such a relaxed state. It is a great way to finish the day. I'm not done with YouTube channels. I would be remiss if I didn't call out the lock-picking lawyer, whose endless videos picking every imaginable kind of lock, again, are just incredibly rigorous. His channel is like, I don't know, I learned new ways of thinking about YouTube just by watching the lock-picking lawyer. Constantine Bogdanov is a model maker who works with styrene and Sintra and does absolutely incredible scale car model kits, such that he often begins a video with a shot of one of his kits fully remote controlled and driving on a landscape, and you can't tell that it's a scale car. It looks like the full-size thing. Lastly, a channel I became super obsessed and watched for dozens and dozens of hours, Cinema Tyler. A dyed-in-the-wool film geek who's made multi-part series about the filmmaking of Coppola, of Kubrick, of Ridley Scott, lots of my favorite filmmakers, and deep dives, gathering interviews from throughout film history to put together these cohesive stories about how Kubrick directs, how Coppola raised the money, early relationship stuff between Kubrick and George Lucas. It's a wonderful, rich film history. Cinema Tyler, I got Joey Famelli from Tested turned on to it. We compared notes about how many we watched over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff out there on YouTube. I would love some suggestions. I know I'm hitting a kind of murderer's row of machinists. If you have some other machining channels, let me know. On to podcasts. I have only two. 99% Invisible. I think I mention them almost every year. Roman Mars has just moved over to the Stitcher network, and 99% Invisible remains one of the great peeks behind the curtain of culture and society, whether it's mail order houses that Sears sent all over the country and dedicated aficionados are trying to find and list out every single one. Also, Alie Ward and her podcast, Ologies, in which she interviews experts in everything from happiness to death to bicycles to cars to one of my personal favorites, crow thanatology. Yes, she has an entire hour devoted to the death practices of crows, ravens, and actually of all corvids, corvid thanatology. Yeah. Alie is not only a friend, but she is a colleague. She is a world-class science communicator who is having so much fun. It feels almost like the podcast is her guilty pleasure if it wasn't one of her main gigs. And I'm so glad that she's doing it as her main gig because the world needs more science communication like this. I've frequently said that I have never met a working scientist that didn't love their job. And Alie Ward brings that out in every interviewee she brings on to the podcast. On to television. I think one of my favorite overall television experiences this year was Loki. I loved the deep dive into the character. I loved the expansion of the Marvel Universe. But I also loved, I don't think it's putting too fine a point on it to say that one of the offshoots of COVID is a reckoning for each of us in and of ourselves and within our communities and our families and within our municipalities about who we are and where we want to go culturally, societally, morally. And Loki grapples with all of those questions, actually, which is pretty impressive. The other two shows that I gravitated towards this year were also focused on questions of what it means to be moral, what it means to be a person, and those two shows are The Americans, which I'm now watching all the way through for the second time because Kerry Russell and Matthew Rhys are just mind-blowing in their performances in this show, but also The Good Place. We just watched The Good Place for my second time all the way through. And again, each of these shows is a meditation on the self, on the illusion of the self, on what it means to love another and to serve your community and the people that you love. I was a political junkie for the longest time. I listened to NPR every day. I watched tons of news. I absorbed the news. I have been doing the opposite over the past year and a half. And these shows have allowed me what I feel like is a much more gentle place to consider the big questions. Movies, I have two. Ghostbusters Afterlife absolutely is at the top of my list. Look, it is, and I'm going to admit to just every amount of bias possible for loving this movie. And I've seen it twice now, and it is an actually great movie. And I'm so proud. I'm so delighted that Jason has carried the torch of the franchise forward. The entire cast, McKenna Grace, Finn Wolfhard, Carrie Coon, Paul Rudd, and everybody else, Logan, who plays Podcast, is a revelation. The cast is incredible. The movie is super sweet, and Tested was able to be embedded, wrapped around the production a little like a spine, like a virus. We had our hands in sort of every little tendril, and it was a thrill. And it's great to see it land and get so much legs right now. I'm very pleased. I also was blown away by Dune. I really, really loved it. I loved how other it felt. It feels like every new film that Denis Villeneuve makes, he expands my understanding of what film can do. That's not overstating the case. And I'm not stating right now that I think that Dune is one of the greatest movies ever made. You can't know such a thing until a few years after a movie comes out. But it is absolutely one of the best movies I watched this year. I've already watched it probably 6 times. I can't stop watching the last 20 minutes. I find it really, really powerful. And the performances in the film, I mean, I'm going to use the phrase again, it's a murderer's row of incredible actors. And the whole cast is incredible. Let's see. I'm going to finish with books. My 2 favorite books this year. The first one is Hail Mary by our friend of Tested and incredible writer Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian. He wrote Artemis, right? He wrote Artemis, and his new book is Hail Mary. It is one of the most readable page turners. It is about that thick, and I burned through it in a day and a half. I could not stop barreling through it. And like all of you who finished the book, I was crying at the end. It's totally emotional. When a book as good as The Martian comes out, and it's the first book of an author, the question is, is lightning gonna strike twice? And Hail Mary is every bit as thrilling as The Martian to me, and it's a completely different book. I am really glad and grateful for what Andy Weir is doing out there. And my other favorite book this year was Carlo Rovellis' The Order of Time. Carlo Rovelli, you might have heard of him because his book 7 Short Lessons in Physics got a lot of play recently, and it is a wonderful book. I think it's way more accessible than A Brief History of Time. He states that he wants to, at the beginning of 7 Lessons in Physics, that he wants to give layperson clarity of each of these detailed physics concepts, and he achieves that. But the flow of time, again, which is a small book, it's a little book, it's like this big, it's 120 pages or something. It reset my entire brain's thinking about physics, relativity, and time. And I am not a technical reader when it comes to this stuff. I don't know my algebra. I still can't list numerical notation. Like I have to like brute force a lot of this stuff. So I need a layperson's understanding. And Carlo Rovelli is not only one of the best science communicators writing today, but he's also one of the most beautiful. His writing is not just clear, it's also gorgeous. And that is tough. I've seen plenty of writers who write great prose that doesn't necessarily communicate all the information. And you can get dragged away by great prose. It can weave a spell over you, but that's not what Rovelli is doing with his books. He is using lyrical, poetic language to make the grammar of the universe more clear to the layperson. And that is also one of my missions in life, and it is great to read someone who has such an incredible mastery. All right, those are my picks for my favorite things this year. The list could have been twice as long, but I had to bound it somehow. I would love your recommendations based on some of the stuff I've said. List them in the comments, and I will actually read them. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this Favorite Things. I hope your 2021 was excellent, and I hope your 2022 is even better. All love and hugs. Happy holidays, and I will see you guys next time. One of the things I love about this channel is that we don't make how-to videos so much as we make what happened videos. And what almost always happens are mistakes and screw-ups. In fact, they're completely integral to making and honestly to being a person. And to celebrate this, Tested has a new batch of demerit badges for the screw-ups you will encounter in the shop. From left to right, we have touching your paint job, assembling things backwards, losing a tiny screw or part, gluing your fingers together, and smashing your thumb. And frankly, if you haven't done both of these, even if you're not a maker, I just don't feel like you've experienced enough of the world. I'm not saying get out a hammer and smash your thumb, but I will tell you that the blacker your fingernail after the injury, the less it's gonna hurt in the long run. I almost forgot, these make excellent additions to your shop apron, and they are available at tested-store.com.